Hey everyone, Sam here, otherwise known as FPL Pricey, and in today's video, I'll be running through my early transfer plans ahead of Game Week 28. Welcome back everyone to another video. Now, as always, I would really appreciate it if you did enjoy today's video, if you just could drop a like and hit subscribe if you're new around here as well. That would be very, very helpful to me. Let's start off by talking about Game Week 27 so far. Of course, we've still got Man United, Everton to be played tonight, and I've got Bruno Fernandes yet to come. Now, he is very highly owned, so I don't think it's going to make much difference to my overall rank. And of course, there are other players there that have decent ownership, like Brian and Burmo, for instance, that could still damage my rank a little bit. But so far, I'm on a slight green arrow, 43 points, and it's actually been a game week that I am quite relieved to get through unscathed, because there were a lot of players that I was very fearful of this week. Chelsea assets like João Pedro and Cole Palmer, and Semenyo as well at Man City. I was very, very worried about what they might do to my rank. Now, João Pedro did get a goal, but he only got 1 bonus point attached. So 7 points from him. I would have probably taken that, especially considering Cole Palmer somehow blanked against Burnley as well. And then Semenyo only picked up DEFCON, so 4 points from him. And if someone had given me that offer at the start of the game week, I would have absolutely taken that. And then it was just down to my players to try and get the points to match up to them. Now, it was a disappointing start on the Saturday. I think I had 4 blanks, and then Haaland picked up the assist as my captain, which I guess isn't nothing, but it's far from spectacular. But then the Sunday was much more positive. I had Munoz picking up quite a lucky clean sheet against Wolves, I think it's fair to say, considering Henderson saved the penalty. Also picked up DEFCON and a bonus point, so 9 points from him. Elliot Anderson got his classic 5-pointer, including the clean sheet, because he got brought off early before Nottingham Forest conceded in the final minutes against Liverpool. Now, the getting brought off early thing was helpful this week, but if that continues, Elliot Anderson might be more of a concern. But so far, he's still picking up DEFCON and he's still getting 4 or 5 every single week. So I don't think he's a major concern, but potentially someone that I'd be willing to upgrade in the next few game weeks. Elsewhere, Timber got an assist, but also yellow carded and brought off before 60 minutes. So just 3 points from him. And he is a player that I would consider selling this game week. We'll come on to that in the next couple of sections. Rice picked up DEFCON, but not much else. So 4 points from him. And otherwise, it was pretty disappointing. Gabriel with 2, Kelleher conceding twice against Brighton with 2, but of course he did get at least a save point there. Rodgers blanking, Enzo blanking for the last 3 game weeks in a row with good fixtures has been very frustrating. More than willing to be getting rid of him very soon. And then Thiago got another blank, but again, actually quite a promising performance from him in particular. Not bad on the underlying data. It's been a couple of weeks in a row where he wasn't far off an attacking return, and there are good fixtures to come. So I don't want to panic on him, but it is, of course, disappointing to get blanks from Thiago, Rodgers, Enzo, Gabriel, Kelleher as well. It's a bit frustrating, but then I've also got issues like Timber, Munoz, Rice, and then Enzo to deal with as well. So plenty of free transfers that I would like to make, but I've only got 2 free transfers to actually use, 2.8 million in the bank. So let's start having a look at how I'm set up next week and then where my transfers might be best used. Okay, so taking a first look at my Game Week 28 side, I wouldn't take too much notice of where the captaincy is at the moment. I've currently got it on Bruno Fernandes at home to Crystal Palace, but it's tight between him and Haaland away at Leeds. And I'll do my thinking on that later on in the week and obviously come to a conclusion in my team selection video. Elsewhere, I just want to focus on where the problem points are. And I think there are 4 or 5 issues that I want to sort out, but I've only got 2 free transfers. I am open to taking a hit this week, by the way. First one of the season it would be. And I've also got 2.8 million in the bank to play with as well. Let's start off in goal. I think Kelleher is the least of my concerns. Burnley away from home for him. I think we can put that one to one side. Into my defence, not overly happy with any of those defenders at the moment in my starting 11. I do have Anderson on my bench at home to Spurs. Arguably, I could look at playing him this week. I am thinking about that, but definitely not a sell from that point of view because he's so cheap. I don't need to worry. My 3 starting players, Gabriel, Timber, and Munoz. I think Gabriel probably stays because I'd still like a bit of the Arsenal defence. They are still very good defensively. They just haven't been racking up the clean sheets. Timber, on the other hand, has been an ongoing concern. It's a lot of money to be spending on a player that isn't picking up that many attacking returns and now has been brought off early. And he consistently is picking up yellow cards, it seems, as well. Or at least it feels like that to me. I'm sure it's not actually that many, but it just seems to be an ongoing issue to have Timber in my side. Munoz as well. Despite the heroics in terms of the 9-pointer this week, the attacking data's not been that great. He does have a midweek match in the Europa Conference League to deal with. And he finished the game at right centre-back as well in Game Week 27. So not massively convinced by Crystal Palace generally right now. They were a little bit fortunate to keep the clean sheet against Wolves, obviously conceded, but saved the penalty. Otherwise, that would have been a pretty poor score from Munoz if they had scored the penalty, of course. So I don't want to get carried away with the 9-pointer. The next couple of fixtures aren't bad, but Man United away, Spurs away, followed by Leeds at home before then blanking. It is on my mind that maybe he is a sell. Moving into the midfield, there are two players that are on my mind to sell. Enzo Fernandez away at Arsenal, followed by not great fixtures after that. He has been very disappointing over the last little fixture run that Chelsea had, and he is on the chopping block for me. We'll come on to the replacements in just a moment's time. Rice as well, not been all that disappointing. I've only owned him for a couple of game weeks, and in that time, he picked up a 14-pointer in the double, and then 4 points against Spurs. So actually, not all that bad. But I don't know if I back him to continuously get the DEFCON, and he's not picking up that many attacking returns either. And before I wildcard, I feel like I can get more value for money out of other players around that sort of price point. So he is another one that I am considering moving on. Bruno Fernandes, Rodgers and Anderson probably stay. I think Anderson's the one I'm also considering having a look at over the next few game weeks. Not because I think he's bad. Far from it, in fact. He is so consistent. But I'm still not convinced, even in this more advanced role, that he's necessarily going to pick up that many attacking returns between now and when I wildcard. And maybe there's a midfielder or two around the same sort of price point that might spike me a double-digit haul. And if that's the case, I will want to chase that if at all possible. So he's not an immediate sell, not someone I'm looking at selling this week necessarily, but I am considering maybe chasing the upside in that position later on down the line. Into my forward line, I don't think we're going to end up discussing either Haaland or Thiago much this week. Haaland obviously was fit to play in Game Week 27, so no injury doubts there. Played all right, more from a creative point of view than anything else. But I think he's a hold now between now and wildcarding. And Thiago was fairly unlucky not to get anything from the Brighton game. Not a great performance from Brentford, it must be said. But looking at the game, I think Thiago in particular was a little bit unlucky not to get some sort of attacking return from that one. And they do have Burnley next up, followed by good fixtures after that. So I'm not going to overthink Haaland or Thiago. They stay. But like I mentioned, I think I brought up 4, maybe 5 picks that might be moved on. So might be worth having a look at who those potential replacements might be. Okay, so I've summarized the players that I'm willing to sell this game week on this graphic, and then had a look at the players that I'd potentially be looking at replacing them with. I actually want to start off with the midfielders because the moves I make there will impact what is available to me in defense. So I think in a perfect universe, I would make both midfield transfers, getting rid of both Enzo Fernandez and Declan Rice for Wirtz and Mbeumo. I'll explain why in just a moment. But first of all, out of the two, Enzo and Rice, Enzo for me is probably the easier sell right now. So if I only make one midfield move, it probably would be Enzo Fernandez. He does play in Game Week 31, so he's probably not a desperate sell, and you could hold on to him, especially if you're able to bench him in Game Week 28 against Arsenal away. But he's been pretty disappointing anyway. He's not on penalties. Palmer and João Pedro are by far the better Chelsea picks right now. So if you're going to hold on to any Chelsea, it would probably be one of those two. I think there is much more upside looking elsewhere from Enzo Fernandez. Now, obviously, I say that, and he's clearly now going to go and haul in the next 4 game weeks. But I think the odds are that there are better picks out there in that midfield spot, especially considering I've got 2.8 million in the bank to play with. So Enzo would be the priority sell out of probably all of my players this week. But Declan Rice, despite the fact that I actually think he'll do all right over the next 3 game weeks, I'd also be willing to get rid of him in a double move and attack the upside for players either with much better attacking data or better fixtures over the next 3 game weeks. And then, of course, a player that won't blank in game week 31. So it removes a future transfer from my planning. So like I said, in a perfect universe, I probably would have already made this move of Enzo Fernandez and Declan Rice to Florian Wirtz and Brian Mbeumo. I would have exact money in the bank to do this, 0.0 spare. But of course, there is a very good reason I've not made this move yet. In fact, two good reasons. Number one, because Wirtz unfortunately pulled out of the starting 11 last minute in game week 27 with a back problem. Now, Slot said that it's not a major issue and he's probably going to be back for next week, but it does feel quite risky, especially before seeing him back in training or any sort of press conference, to make a move early in the week on a player that might not be fit for game week 28. I'm very hopeful he will be. And again, I keep saying perfect universe for some reason, but ideally he would be my midfielder transfer in this game week. But what if he's not fit? And then I've made a move for an expensive player who's going to end up on my bench in game week 28. So I'm going to wait on that one, which is unfortunate because I might get priced out of this double move fairly quickly, especially if Brian Mbeumo goes and hauls against Everton on the Monday evening, then his price might start going up and I would have to act quite fast. Now on to Mbeumo. I'm not seeing tons of people talking about him at the moment, but I still think he's a very good purchase. Very good underlying attacking data, playing in an advanced role in that Man United side who do create a ton of chances all the way through the season, even under Amorim. They were very high in the XG tables, and that's not exactly disappeared under Carrick either. And although the fixtures aren't standout amazing, they're certainly not as good as Liverpool's. They are still all right. I think Crystal Palace and Aston Villa at home are fine. Newcastle away, Bournemouth away. Okay, it's not brilliant, but a player like Mbeumo could return in any game week. And actually, I think having the combination of both Wirtz and Mbeumo will be quite differential for me. And also, my gut instinct tells me anyway that it will be quite powerful for me over the next 4 game weeks. So I would ideally like to make both of these moves, nothing in the bank to do it with. So if any player moves in price again, then I have got a problem, but it is very tempting. Now, if I did make those 2 moves with nothing in the bank and I was able to do so, maybe we get good news on Wirtz today, for example, then I am considering taking a hit to also make a defensive move. Now, that already doesn't sound like a great idea. Taking a hit for a defender rarely pays off. But I suppose if I attribute the hit to Wirtz or Mbeumo, mentally at least, that feels a little bit more comfortable. And making 3 quite powerful transfers to maybe remove 2 blankers from game week 31 and set me up quite nicely in the meantime for the next 3 game weeks before we get to 31 does sound pretty good. So moving across to the defenders, the 2 that I'm eyeing up selling are clearly Timber and Munoz. I've already kind of described my reasons behind wanting to potentially get rid of them. I think if I had the choice right now and money was no object, I'd probably get rid of Munoz first. His attacking data is very, very good. And of course, the minutes are good as well. But Palace just don't seem like they're in the best shape right now. There's obviously a lot going on behind the scenes at the club. Munoz himself didn't put up any attacking data against Wolves, and they were fortunate to keep a clean sheet in that match. And then, of course, conceded 3 against Burnley just before that. They now go up against Man United away, who I've already explained have very good XG rankings. Spurs away from home, admittedly, probably not that bad of a fixture, but then Leeds at home as well. And Leeds have not been poor in attack either, followed by a blank. So I'm wondering if Munoz is the priority over Timber. Now, a lot of people are sick of Timber. I'm quite sick. I joked about it on X last night when he got subbed off. I'm very tempted to get rid of him. And I think if I was going heart over head, he'd probably be gone right now. But taking a step back, I think that early substitution was because he did look a bit leggy. He has played a lot of minutes recently, and the attacking data is still good. So if I think he does start and keep playing good minutes from now onwards, I think until the blank game week, he's a decent enough hold. It's just whether or not he does continue to start. Now, I personally think that given the turnaround between now and Chelsea, that early substitution was probably to rest him up ahead of next week, another big game coming, but they do have the midweek off. So I think if I was putting money down on it, he starts again against Chelsea and likely gets very good minutes in that match. There is risk, but at the very least, I do have a good first bench option this week. So both of them probably need to go in the next few game weeks before we get to the blank. So I have a full playing 11, but it's just ordering it correctly. And I think if money was no object, Munoz would be the first player I was willing to get rid of, despite the attacking data, because Timber's not that far off of it either. And I've still got this gut feeling that the second I sell Timber, he's going to go and score a couple of goals all of a sudden. So yeah, again, playing it on gut there, but I think out of the two, I'd prefer to sell Munoz first. But it's not that simple, because the replacement that I actually really want is Virgil van Dijk. Now, it does feel a bit like points chasing, considering he's hauled twice in the last 2 game weeks. But he is a great FPL pick. He's good on the DEFCON. He's got decent enough underlying attacking data. We know that he's very good from set pieces. And the next 4 fixtures are still very good. Liverpool defensively have looked a much better team recently. Coming up against West Ham at home, Wolves away, Spurs at home, Brighton away, I could very feasibly see 2, maybe even 3 clean sheets in that time. So I still think Virgil van Dijk is my preferred defensive replacement. I could look at O'Reilly and the data's great, but he does blank, so it doesn't solve the issue that I'm about to be faced with anyway. And Hill, although I do really like him, the defensive data for Bournemouth is nowhere near as good as Liverpool's. Conceded 3 XG against West Ham. And the fixtures are good, but he is overperforming on his underlying attacking data. So really, I'm relying on clean sheets and DEFCON more than anything else. And yes, he'll get DEFCON. He'll keep maybe 1 or 2 clean sheets in that time. But I think I do prefer Virgil van Dijk. So with that in mind, I've already described that ideally my 2 midfield moves would leave me with nothing in the bank. If I took a hit for Virgil van Dijk as well, I no longer have the money to make the Munoz to van Dijk move because I've been priced out. So it would have to be selling Timber for Van Dijk if I was to make the hit, including both Wirtz and Mbeumo. But it's not as simple as that either, because what if Wirtz is injured? And what if maybe I'm willing to compromise on Mbeumo and get a cheaper midfielder? So let's take a look at some of those options now. Okay, so it's worth having a quick look at some of the cheaper options that I'm also considering for all of the reasons I've just mentioned. I might want Munoz to Van Dijk, and therefore I need to look at a cheaper option than Mbeumo. I might not be able to get Wirtz because he's injured, or maybe I get priced out of Mbeumo in the first place. So a cheaper midfielder is very much on the radar. I think it's quite likely I at least buy one of these players, if not this week, over the next few game weeks as we lead up to the blank anyway. So it's worth having a plan in place as to which one I prefer. Now, I've included Anthony Gordon. He's a bit more expensive. He is exciting. 0.57 XGI per 90 is actually slightly better than Brian Mbeumo's, but the fixtures aren't quite as good as maybe some of the others on this graphic, and the minutes are quite shaky. So I think mentally I'm finding it quite difficult to be picking him over some of the others. Now, the Bournemouth midfielders, both Ryan and Tavernier, are both very exciting to me. Very good prices, 5.6 and 5.3 respectively. Ryan has the better underlying attacking data so far, but it is a very small sample size. But everything we've seen from him in the Premier League to date has been incredibly promising. Very direct, he's strong, he's intelligent. I like the movement off the ball. I like the fact he cuts inside and gets his shots away very, very quickly. Very good underlying attacking data, like I said, and there are good fixtures to come. So it's whether or not he gets the minutes. Everything we've seen so far would suggest it should continue. He should keep getting the minutes. But the only thing that's playing on my mind is, up until this point, they have had their injury doubts. So Ryan has almost been a lock in that team, maybe because of those injuries. Whereas now Tavernier's coming back in, Brooks is coming back in. They've got Krupi, Evan Nilsson as well. Adley is in there. Are we absolutely certain that Ryan is going to continue to get 90 minutes? I personally think it's quite likely he does, but there is at least a slight risk there because he is a new player to the league. With Tavernier, the data's not quite as good, 0.38, but his minutes historically have been quite secure. He's a bit cheaper, and he's got penalties, which is a big, big plus. So with the fixtures in mind as well, it would be quite nice to have at least one Bournemouth attacker, and I'm quite on the fence between the two of them. I think if I was going to go on gut instinct today, and luckily I'm not looking at my moves right now, but I think I'd go for Ryan. I'm just quite excited by the potential upside that he's got. Everything I've seen is so exciting, and the data so far is very good. It's a bit of a gut feeling, but I do think he's going to continue to do very well. However, it's not as simple as just picking one of the Bournemouth players, because you've also got Dango Altara, arguably Kevin Schade at Brentford as well, with good fixtures, possibly even slightly better fixtures. He's 5.9 million, good underlying attacking data at 0.44, and the minutes have looked good recently. A little bit concerning that Schade was on the bench in the most recent match, especially if you're looking at buying Schade. But I think even if you're looking at Dango Altara as well, I'd be not put off necessarily, but I'd be a little bit mindful that they're squeezing 3 players into 2 positions now, because Thiago's going to continue to start. And then when you're looking at the wide men, you've got Lewis Potter, Dango Altara and Schade. Now, in the previous match, Lewis Potter started and Dango Altara started, but Schade's a good player and he could take minutes off of, well, either one of them really. So although I think Dango Altara is a very good pick at a very good price as well, would I be hugely shocked if he got brought off early in one of the upcoming games, or maybe got the odd random benching if maybe he performed poorly the match previous? Not massively. And considering I've already got double Brentford anyway, do I need to be tripling up and going double attack with Thiago and Altara? I'm not sure. That leaves me with Harry Wilson, and although he is probably the most boring pick of the lot because he's been well owned previously this season, his ownership and effective ownership has dropped drastically in the last few game weeks. And I still really like what I see from him. The minutes are pretty solid. He's got good fixtures, 3 home games in the next 4, including Burnley at home in the blank. The underlying attacking data is not bad. We know he's got a great free kick on him. I think Harry Wilson might be the answer, you know. That Spurs fixture looks pretty green to me. West Ham's not bad. Forest away's not bad either. And then Burnley after that. It feels boring because he's been talked about a lot this season, but he's not that well owned right now. And I do just wonder if maybe people are going to overlook him because it's kind of a, oh yeah, been there, done that. I want the next exciting pick. But I don't really care as long as the pick gets points. So I am quite tempted to go with Wilson regardless, because I really like those fixtures. I think they're deceptively good. I'm just not sure whether I prefer him over Ryan or Tavernier. And I'm very on the fence as to which one of those 3 I prefer. I think right now, if I was forced to make the move this very second, it would probably be Ryan or Wilson. I think I might go Wilson, but it's like 51-49. So it's very, very close. I'm going to think about that later on in the week. But again, like I said, hopefully I can still afford Wirtz and Mbeumo and they're both fit. And I just go for both of them right now. And then I can pick one of these players later on down the line as we approach the blank. Okay, so I realise my ramblings today might not be the most concise and it might be a little bit confusing as to what my plans are. So I thought I'd use the excellent tool that is FPL.team. Do go check it out if you get the chance and if you want to do some planning, completely free to do so. So I thought I'd just map out my moves and the different combinations I'm considering, and hopefully it acts as quite a nice explainer to you. So I think first off, like I said, in a perfect universe, which I keep referencing today for some reason, I'm not sure why, but Enzo out for Wirtz in, if he's fit, would probably be my ideal first transfer. But I'm very, very likely to make 2 this week. I think it's extremely unlikely that I don't make both free transfers this week, at least. And then I would consider taking a hit as well. I think my second move right now, again, if fit, if he gets through the Man United-Everton game, would be Rice to Mbeumo. And like I said, I've got the exact money in the bank to do that combination. So that would be without a hit. That midfield all of a sudden I think looks pretty powerful. I've got 4 quite high upside players and Anderson will tick along for now. And then I might look at moving him on in a few game weeks time to chase the upside on Wilson, Ryan, Tavernier, one of those picks after I free up a little bit more money, of course, first. So if I made those 2 moves, I would still be very tempted to bring in Van Dijk, but I couldn't then do that for Munoz because Van Dijk is now sadly more expensive than Munoz and I've got nothing in the bank. So it would have to be Timber for Van Dijk. That would be fine to do in terms of money. I've got 0.1 in the bank to do so, but it would be for a hit. And my gut feeling does tell me that Timber will start in game week 28 and then probably still be a decent pick all the way up to game week 31 where I will have to sell him regardless. So I've got 2 options therefore. If I do want to continue with Wirtz and Mbeumo and Wirtz is fit, then I have that decision to make whether or not I sell Timber for Van Dijk. And I think there's perfectly reasonable logic to do so, especially because Van Dijk has 4 fixtures versus Timber's 3, and Timber has been quite disappointing recently. But like I said, ideally, I think I'd prefer to get rid of Munoz first. If I did want to do that, let me just undo that last transfer. And then actually, I'll undo the Mbeumo move. Again, let's pretend and hope that Wirtz is fit. But if he's not, then maybe he's the one I pick a cheaper midfielder for. But Rice to someone like, let's go Wilson for now, just as an example, because I think I said I very, very marginally prefer him over Ryan, but of course Ryan's cheaper, so it could easily be Ryan in that position instead. All of a sudden, I've got 2.7 million in the bank. So I could get rid of Munoz very, very comfortably for Virgil van Dijk and still have 2.5 million. And then I can hold on to Timber for a couple of game weeks more, sell him ahead of the blank. So it's just how much I want Mbeumo, and the fixtures aren't as good as Wilson's or Ryan's or Dango Altara's, but something in my gut is still telling me that Mbeumo is going to do very, very well over the next 4 game weeks. So ideally, I do want him, but I'm not sure it's a massive compromise to go for Wilson or Ryan or Dango instead. So that's the other -4 I'm looking at. Now, a -4 for a defender, because the defensive move here is probably the one that I don't need to make, is probably never wise. But again, if I just go back quickly, if I've only made the Wirtz move, who's to say I can't just hold on to Rice for another game week? And I could just do Munoz up to Van Dijk if I'm really that desperate to get Van Dijk. It does remove another blanking player ahead of time. I will need to make the Rice move later on down the line, but it gives me another week to look at the information and then maybe make a more informed decision as my Rice replacement after that. And although Chelsea's not an easy fixture, I think he's relatively likely to get DEFCON. He is on set pieces, so he's always got the chance of an attacking return, and you know he's going to get 90. So Rice I could hold on to for another game week to avoid the hit, bring in double Liverpool if Wirtz is fit, that is. Of course, Virgil van Dijk should be. Or if Wirtz isn't fit, then I can still make my Mbeumo move, and I've still got 0.7 in the bank to think about my Rice replacement later on down the line. So maybe that's the combination that makes most sense. Make the defensive move, keep Timber for now, because my gut feeling is still saying that there are points to be won on Timber just yet. And I think a lot of people selling him might make him quite a nice, quite powerful differential if I think his minutes are going to be good against Chelsea. And I feel like they will be, but that's just my gut. I might be wrong on that. So I'm making at least 2 of those 3 moves, but I might make all 3 for the -4 as well if I think the upside's there. And honestly, if both Mbeumo and Wirtz are fit, I am going to find it quite difficult to not make the -4 getting rid of Timber for Van Dijk and just steam into all of the players I want all at once. But anyway, I'm going to start rambling now, so I'll finish the video there. Hopefully that all makes sense for you. I'll reset it here and say that if I was picking right now and I knew that Mbeumo and Wirtz were fit, I'd probably just make those 2 moves and then consider the Van Dijk move later on in the game week. But we don't have perfect information. We don't know if Wirtz is fit. We don't know if Mbeumo gets through the Man United-Everton game. So I'm going to leave it for now and probably come to a decision after we get some news on Wirtz and, of course, see how Mbeumo does against Everton. Anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. Let me know if you've got any questions in the comments below, and I'll try and get back to you as quickly as possible. Leave a like, hit subscribe if you're new around here, and I'll see you tomorrow as we run through the best players to be buying ahead of Game Week 28.